Have you ever sent a text that just got completely misunderstood? Or maybe you've walked away from a conversation thinking, were we even talking about the same thing? Communication feels like it should be the easiest thing in the world, but so often it's a total minefield. So let's do this. Let's break the whole thing down. Because by understanding how it actually works, we can all get a little better at building connections instead of just more confusion.
So yeah, let's just start with the biggest question right out of the gate. Why is this stuff so hard? I mean, we do it all day, every day, and yet it feels like we're constantly getting our wires crossed. We argue over things we thought were crystal clear, and somehow simple requests get twisted into major problems. What is the deal?
Well, the reason is that every single conversation, whether it's face-to-face, over a call, or just in a group chat, is actually a really complex construction. It's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of different parts all working together. So for our time here, think of it like this. We're going to look at the blueprint for communication, all the individual pieces, and then we'll see how they all get put together to build the final structure.
Okay, first things first, the blueprint. Before we can build anything, we have to know what the parts are. These are the absolute basic building blocks you'll find in every single interaction, from just saying hey to a coworker to having a life-changing talk with someone you love.
It all kicks off with the participants. You've got the sender and the receiver. The sender gets the ball rolling, and the receiver has to interpret the message. But here's the crucial part. It's not a simple handoff. Each person brings their own unique experiences, their culture, their mood. It all acts like a filter, and that filter shapes how the message is both sent and understood. And right there, that's our first big clue as to why things can go sideways so easily.
Next up, you've got the message. This is basically the what of the whole thing, the actual stuff being shared. It could be verbal, like saying, let's grab lunch, or it could be totally nonverbal, like just giving someone a thumbs up. It's the core idea we're trying to get across.
Of course, that message needs a way to travel, and that's where the channel comes in. This is the how. In a normal conversation, the channel is sound waves hitting your ears. If you send a text, the channel is electronic data. And think about it, the channel you pick can completely change the message's impact, right? Having a serious talk over text just feels different than doing it in person. The medium really is part of the message.
Now for the really cool part, the stuff happening inside our heads, encoding and decoding. Encoding is the mental process of taking a thought, like the feeling of being hungry, and turning it into a message, like the words, I'm hungry. And decoding is just the reverse, turning that message back into a thought. This step is so critical because this is where so much gets lost in translation. What you encode is not always what the other person decodes.
And finally, our last piece of the blueprint, noise. Now, noise is anything that gets in the way of that message. It could be literal, physical noise, like a loud TV in the background. But honestly, it's more often psychological noise. Like if you're super stressed or distracted, you literally can't decode what the other person is saying. Noise is the great saboteur of clear communication.
Okay, blueprint in hand. Let's start building. We're going to look at the first and simplest way to put these pieces together. I want you to think of it as the megaphone model.
This is officially known as the linear model, and it sees communication as a simple one-way street. That's it. A sender, like a radio host, encodes a message, sends it out through a channel, and it hits a receiver. The only thing this model really cares about is, did the message get from point A to point B successfully? And you see this model all over the place. Think about a big public speech, or a company-wide email blast, or one of those emergency alerts that pops up on your phone. In all these cases, the focus is just on blasting the message out there. There's no real way for the sender to know if you got it, or, what you thought about it. It is purely a one-way broadcast.
But let's be real, most of our communication isn't that simple, is it? So let's level up to a more advanced model. Let's call this one the walkie-talkie model. This is the interactive model, and its big game-changing innovation is one word: feedback. In this model, we're not just senders or receivers anymore. We're both. And we take turns. You talk, then I talk. Over. It recognizes that communication is a two-way street, not just a one-way broadcast. So this is a huge step up, for sure. But does it really capture the true, messy, dynamic nature of a real conversation? Do we actually just take turns so neatly, like we're using walkie-talkies? Or is there something more going on? And that question brings us to the most sophisticated and, frankly, the most realistic model of them all. So forget the megaphone, forget the walkie-talkie,
I want you to think of this as a conversation dance.
Okay, so check out the key difference here. The walkie-talkie model says we alternate roles, sender, then receiver. But the conversation dance, what's officially called the transactional model, says we are simultaneously senders and receivers. We're not just waiting for our turn to talk. We're constantly sending nonverbal signals, adapting to each other's tone and body language, all in real time. It's a fluid exchange.
And this is a really profound shift in thinking. In this model, communication isn't just about swapping data. It's about co-creating meaning together. It's how we build relationships, form communities, and even figure out who we are. It's the very engine that builds our social reality.
So we see that communication isn't just a simple transfer of information. It's this dynamic dance where we build meaning together. And that means every conversation we have, big or small, has a real impact. This realization brings us to the rules of engagement. How do we make sure we're communicating not just effectively, but also ethically?
All right, I need you to prepare yourself for a statistic that might honestly blow your mind. In any face-to-face conversation, what percentage of the meaning do you think comes from the actual words you say? Go ahead, take a guess. The answer, according to some landmark research, is a measly 7%. So if words are only 7%, where is the other 93% coming from? Well, get this. A massive 55% comes from body language, your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions. And another 38% comes from your tone of voice. Just let that sink in for a second. This means that how you say something is exponentially more powerful than what you say. An apology delivered with a sarcastic tone isn't an apology, right? Our bodies and our voices are always broadcasting messages, whether we mean for them to or not.
And when you realize that 93% of your meaning is nonverbal, you realize you have this immense responsibility. Your tone and your body language can either build incredible trust and connection, or they can create deep hurt and misunderstanding. Ethical communication is all about being mindful of that power and making sure you wield it with care. So how do you handle those tricky situations where the right thing to say isn't so obvious? Well, there's a really helpful framework for this, all based on the simple idea of being truthful. Here are 4 practical steps. First, just check in with your conscience. Your gut usually knows. Second, really push yourself to find truthful alternatives instead of taking the easy way out with a little white lie. Third, talk it over with people you trust and respect. And finally, my personal favorite, apply the test of publicity. How would your actions look if they were on the front page of the news? It's a great little mental checklist for communicating with integrity.
But ultimately, all of this can be boiled down to a timeless piece of wisdom that you can find in almost every culture throughout human history. This version from Confucius just says it so perfectly. It's the ultimate test of reversibility and really the foundation of all ethical communication. If we just kept this one single principle in mind, imagine how many misunderstandings we could avoid, how many relationships could be strengthened. What if this became the blueprint for every single conversation we built?